Hey all, this is Nikhil Ramashasthri. I work as a staff software engineer at Turo. I'm going to present my learnings of API first development. Embracing it has enhanced scalability and integration for Turo. To go over the agenda items, I will first introduce the concept and explain its core principles, specification formats, tools used for design, documentation, and testing. Then we'll present you with use cases, later go over the benefits, challenges, mitigation strategies, and best practices. Eventually, we'll conclude. To start with the introduction, according to 2023 survey conducted by Postman, 67% of the developers expect to spend more time on developing an API or API work in general. At Turo, we often struggled with explicit versus implicit scope of an API without understanding the third-party clients or front-end developers or mobile developers. Over time, we have learned development of an API with respect to stakeholders who are using it defines its scope. Hence, API-first development prioritizes designing APIs as a foundation of application development. At Turo, the back-end development team has started involving stakeholders during the brainstorming sessions of API design. This helped us close a lot of loose ends. Hence, we followed pattern of define API contract, implement it, and test and deploy. In application development, there is always a procedure and consumer lifecycle. As a producer, we started defining the API endpoints and its request or response structure with stakeholders. In some cases, we have mocked the data with loose coupling that enables scalability and flexibility. These principles has enabled consumer to not worry the underlying complexity of an API. In turn, provided the abstraction and encapsulation as well. To give an overview on specification formats, we have used OpenAPI 3.0. There are other formats like RESTful API modeling language and Markdown-based API blueprints for different use cases. Among these, OpenAPI stands out clearly, as it supports JSON and YAML and generates code extensively. As part of API-first development, to establish smooth collaboration, we used design tools like Stoplight, Swagger, and Postman for testing and mocking requests or responses. Swagger UI is very handy with respect to documentation, where we have explicitly collaborated about things like HTTP error codes and etc. API-first development can be applied in use cases like independent scaling microservices, content management systems, mobile applications, and Internet of Things ecosystems. After practicing API-first development for few projects, our developers are never going back to code-first approach. As API-first development provides scalability, flexibility with better integration, it enhanced developer experience by 29% and API adoption rate by 35% for our teams. The challenges to implement API-first development started with huge learning curve with key challenges around versioning and security concerns. Managed to handle these challenges with few breakout sessions from time to time and training around tools like Swagger and OpenAPI 3.0 adoption. Started to follow versioning policies strictly, and API gateways and doing regular audits have helped us from security standpoint. Here are the few best practices for implementation of API first development. Brainstorm design of an API with intention to future-proof it. Implement robust error handling and validation. Update outdated documentation from time to time. Involve stakeholders early and gather feedback. That helps a lot. And effectively versioning the APIs for smooth transitions also helps. In conclusion, API-first development is revolutionizing the modern software architecture by emphasizing scalability, flexibility, and superior integration capabilities. By designing APIs as foundation layer, organizations can foster parallel development and enhance collaboration between the teams, ultimately accelerating the time to market for their products. Turo experience with technology leaders such as Uber, GitHub, and Stripe have demonstrated the significant advantages of adopting an API-first strategy, from improved system modularity to seamless third-party integrations. Thank you for your time. Have a nice day. Bye.